The day is finally here. It's one of the biggest games in Syracuse history, and it happens tonight. And we're going to talk all about it right here on Locked On Syracuse.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. And as I said off the top, it's finally here. Syracuse and Clemson with everything on the line for Syracuse to keep their hopes up for an NCAA tournament bid. And we're going to talk all about it. Plus, the biggest game since when for Syracuse? Syracuse has played in some big games recently. Where does this one stack up? And plus, how the Orange can beat the Tigers tonight. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. All right, everyone. We've made it to Tuesday, March 5th. Syracuse has handled its business over the past 4 games. They might not have won in the most pretty of fashions, but here they are with the chance to really get themselves back into contention, to really do it, to get a signature win, another signature win, I might add. Now, Syracuse has played in big games before in recent history. We know this. Some of the big ones, well, just last season when Duke came to the Dome. And if you recall, that was on February 18th, so a little over a year ago. Syracuse was coming off a ranked win at home against NC State. And they were 16-10 at the time. And I remember thinking to myself, well, they're not quite there yet, but if they can beat Duke at home, they really would have put themselves in position down the stretch to play to get into the tournament. But lo and behold, Duke comes to the Dome, Syracuse gets blown out, and from then on, it was essentially a collapse down the stretch. So that's one of those big games that really didn't work out in Syracuse's favor. The good news is that some of them have worked out in the Orange's favor. Take 2021. That whole stretch down the stretch into the tournament. I know I just said stretch and stretch twice, but who cares? If you recall that game against Virginia in the ACC quarterfinals, that game was all about keeping it competitive and showing why, this is the most important part, showing why Syracuse should be a tournament team. It wasn't enough to just lose relatively close. They had to really show to the committee that this team deserved to make it in 2021. They didn't necessarily have to beat Virginia, although if they had beaten Virginia, it was a lock they were going to get in. But they had to really keep it close, be competitive, and show why they were a tournament team. And that's what they did. They come out hot. They build a lead. Cavaliers are a good team. They start punching back. Syracuse hangs around in the second half. And lo and behold, Virginia wins on a buzzer beater. And yeah, Syracuse lost that game. And it was a big one. They lost. But they lost in a fashion where it gained everyone's respect because Virginia was a team that was coasting, that was, I believe, a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament that year. Everyone knew how good Virginia was. And the fact that Syracuse not only kept it close, but lost on a buzzer beater it proved to the committee that Syracuse not only deserved to be in the tournament, but be in the field of 60 or be in that initial, not be in the first four. They weren't even a first four team. They got that initial bye. That was huge. That was an enormous game for Syracuse. And even though they lost, it worked out in their favor. Now, another one, and ironically, this one came against Clemson. Came against Clemson back in 2018. I believe it was also the final game of the regular season for Syracuse. This one was at the Dome. Clemson came in as the 18th ranked team in the country. 18th. And to that point, something that was missing from Syracuse's resume was that signature win. They didn't have one. Unlike this year where they do technically have one, Syracuse did beat North Carolina. I think some people are forgetting that. Maybe not Syracuse Nation, but around the country, I think people forget that Syracuse beat North Carolina this year because it's kind of hard to believe, but they did. But that 2018 team, they didn't quite have that. And so when Clemson came to the Dome, it was an absolute must-win for Syracuse. They had to get that one. Ranked team coming into your building, last game of the regular season, you got to get that one. And it was a low-scoring, just a grind out there. Tyus Battle and O'Shea Brissett combined for, I believe, 34 of Syracuse's 55 points. And they go on to win. They go on to win, and Syracuse was then selected as a first four team, where they then make it all the way to the Sweet 16 before losing to Duke. Now, I'm sure there's other big games out there that we can talk about. There's other ones. Right? So if you feel like I'm missing some in the recent past, and I probably am, right? I'm not perfect. Drop some below in the comments section, right? We're talking about the recent past here, right? And we're talking mainly in the context of, well, we all know tournament games are the most important, right? So the entire 2021 NCAA tournament, we get that, San Diego State and West Virginia and then Houston right after. We get that one, those ones. Those are by default, right? But I'm talking about other big games down the stretch in the regular season or ACC tournament for this team. And where do you think this one tonight ranks among the others that I just mentioned and the ones that you might drop in the comments section? Now, coming up, we're going to talk about why this game is so important and why this one might be the most out of all the other ones that I just mentioned. We'll be right back after this. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. And let's talk about Syracuse football for a second, because I know there's a lot of optimism around the program. They've done much better in the recruiting this year with new coach Fran Brown. Well, how good do you really think they're going to be in year one? Well, their odds right now to win the ACC are plus 4,200. You can get in on that. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome, everyone, back into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. Syracuse has a huge one tonight in Clemson. Huge one. There's everything to gain with this one. What separates this game for the other four during this win streak is that with the other 4 games, I know that that Syracuse dropped in the net even though they beat Louisville, but at the end of the day with the other 4 games, it was just about getting the job done. Just win the game. Keep yourself afloat, right? Sure, they might have gained a little bit with NC State, and who knows, if NC State just does a little bit better, they might be a quad 1 win. They might be a quad 1 win, but for now they're not. Not yet. Virginia Tech at home is nice, but it's not a real resume booster, right? And with Louisville and Notre Dame, it was just, you would like to see Syracuse blow them out, but at the end of the day, it is so much better to win. It's just so much better on your resume that they at least won. They won the games. That's really, at the end of the day, what matters. I know they dropped in the net after Louisville, but even if they had beaten that team by a lot, I promise you they wouldn't have gained much ground. They had everything to lose against Notre Dame and Louisville, and really Virginia Tech and NC State were to keep afloat. But this one tonight is one of those quad 1 games with a star next to it. And what do I mean by a star next to it? Well, it's not one of those cheap rinky-dink quad 1 wins. And what I mean by that is, a top 75 net team on the road is quad 1. So if you get a win, NC State could eventually become a quad 1 win if they get into the top 75. But we all kind of agree that while it is difficult because it is quad 1, it's not one of those that's a resume. That's a real resume booster, right? But for Clemson, that one has a star next to it. Clemson's going to be a projected 5-6 seed in the tournament. That's a star next to it. And Syracuse has one of those already. They have another one of those. They beat North Carolina at home, but that is a big one right there. North Carolina could probably be a top 2 seed in the tournament. You beat North Carolina at home. You win at Clemson. Those are two quad 1 star victories. You look at those and say, wow, that's big, right? And plus, Syracuse has beaten Pitt twice, one of which on the road, which was quad 1. And that's not quite rinky-dink. Pitt's up there in the net. They keep gaining. So in terms of just resume boosting, it's big. Right? It's big for that reason. But it's not just that. It's also what happens if they lose. What happens if they lose this game? I don't think this is like 2021 where they can lose close. They can't. They have to win this game outright. If they lose this game, then what do they have to do in the ACC tournament? Well, for starters, if everything goes according to KenPom, they would be the 7th seed in the ACC, which would mean they would have to play Carolina or Duke in the quarterfinal. That doesn't seem fun. And while a win against one of those teams, especially beating North Carolina twice, I think could make up for the fact that they lost, or that if they lose tonight against Clemson, I think it could make up for that. Don't get me wrong. But do you really want to take your chances twice with North Carolina, or 3 times with North Carolina and twice with Duke? I just, you never say never with this team. You always got to believe. But it's just not what you would prefer. You wouldn't prefer to face one of those teams just to make up for the fact they lose at Clemson. You just don't want to do that. You don't. Now, if they win, right now they're the 4 seed in the ACC. Even with a win, they do not clinch that. They do not clinch a 4 with just a win. They then need They then need Wake Forest to lose one of its final 2 games of the regular season to then clinch the 4 seed. But either way, I believe Syracuse would be in the 4-5. They would be in the 4-5 if they beat Clemson. Now, we can discuss whether, and I've talked about, do you want the double bye? And, do you want it? Do you want that extra game? But I think we can all agree that it is much more advantageous for this team to be in the 4-5 and get to play Wake Forest in the quarterfinal than to have to play Duke or Carolina in the quarterfinal. You want to face those teams as far down the ACC as possible. The stakes are there. I'm not going to say they're out of the NCAA tournament discussion if they lose tonight, but it's not looking good, and their path to make up for a loss is beating Carolina or Duke, assuming everything goes according to KenPom. I do not want those. I don't like those odds. Those are not very favorable for Syracuse. So everything to gain tonight. Everything to gain and everything to lose. They have put themselves in a position. They have put themselves in this position where they can do this, where there's legitimate hope that they can. And we're going to talk about how Syracuse can beat Clemson tonight, because I think they will. I think Syracuse is going to beat Clemson tonight, and we're going to talk about how they can do that right after this. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. It has room up to 8, an expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and so far we've talked about where this game tonight between Syracuse and Clemson ranks among some of the recent history of big games in Syracuse. And I think that this is the biggest one in quite some time, especially in the regular season. Now it's time to talk about how the Orange can actually beat the Tigers tonight, because I truly believe that Syracuse is going to win this game, and you should too. Now, the number one key for me is rebounding. Now, when Syracuse and Clemson played just 3 weeks ago, aside from a bad final 10 minutes of the first half, aside from a bad stretch, Syracuse hung around in that game, came back, and, Clemson made more plays down the stretch and ended up winning. But it was a close one, 77-68. It was a relatively close game. But the biggest difference was rebounding. Clemson out-rebounded Syracuse 41-22 in that one. Guys, that's not good enough. I'm not saying that Syracuse has to out-rebound Clemson tonight, because I don't think they do, but they have to keep it somewhat close. Somewhat close. And it has to be a 5-man unit on the glass. What does that mean? It means that when a shot goes up, all 5 guys on the court find a Clemson player and box him out. You don't have to be taller than someone to box out. And I understand that Clemson is the bigger team. But just what I said, you do not have to be taller to box a guy out. It's a 5-man effort to rebound the basketball. When a shot goes up, everyone has to find a man and box them out. Now, one of the leading rebounders for Clemson in that game, in fact, he tied for the team lead in rebounds, is Jack Clark. And the reason why I mentioned Jack Clark is because he missed Clemson's Saturday game. He missed that one due to an illness. We don't know as of right now if he's going to play tonight. He had 10 rebounds in that one. But more importantly, this is the stat that really gets me, because he is an integral defender for them, and he can rebound the basketball, and he had 10 rebounds against Syracuse. When Jack Clark is playing for Clemson, when he's playing, they're 14-4. But when he's not playing, they're 6-5. 14-4 with Jack Clark, 6-5 without him. He's a very important defender for them. He can rebound the basketball like he did against Syracuse. He might not be in the lineup tonight. No excuses if he's not in the lineup. On top of that, by the way, Clemson is 9-1 when he starts. 9-1. He started against Syracuse, by the way. And he might not be playing. You got to control the boards. And one of Clemson's best defenders and rebounders might not play. Might not play. Even if he is, though, still got to do what I just said. Got to keep it close. Now, the other key to this one is you got to stop Joe Girard. You got to stop him. And that's not easy, right? Stopping Joe Girard. How do you do it? You know he's one of the best shooters in the country. We've seen him play. And he torched Syracuse. He had 18 points and only took 6 shots. Talk about efficient. How do you stop him? And the answer is, well, you can block his shot, but really, even if you got a hand in his face, it doesn't seem to matter with him. But the way you got to do it is you got to force him off the three-point line. You got to get him to drive. Intense closeouts on him. Force him to go to the basket and maybe settle for that 15-foot jumper. Make him settle for the 15-foot jumper instead of the 23-foot dagger 3. Syracuse can live with Joe Girard making his twos, but he is a type of player who can really swing a basketball game because he's capable of hitting, you know how Chris Bell hit 8 threes and a half against NC State? Joe Girard can do that. He can do that, and we know he can do that. We've seen Joe Girard in a Syracuse uniform for 4 years. The way to quote-unquote stop him is you got to force him off the three-point line. That's what Syracuse is going to have to do regarding Girard. As far as the Orange themselves. Now, the Orange themselves, we know that Judah has to be Judah. We know that Starling's got to do his thing. We need Bell to hit his shots. We need Malik Brown to do his best to handle PJ Hall down low. We need Quadir Copeland to be that spark plug. We get all that. But I think one of the biggest keys for tonight, and one of the main reasons why Syracuse has been struggling in the second half of games, is fatigue. I think a lot of people think it's fatigue. And that's because Syracuse doesn't have a deep lineup. That means Kyle Cuff and Justin Taylor, those two, are super important for tonight. They have to give impactful minutes. They have to be active. Good or bad, they just have to be out there doing stuff. And I know that sounds so weird, but they cannot have any passengers. They cannot have anyone who is invisible on the floor. So when those two guys get on the floor, we're not asking them for them to be superstars. No. But play a role. Justin Taylor especially has been playing really well for Syracuse lately. He has. And we need him to continue that. We need him to continue to go to the basket, cut back door, get to the free throw line, hopefully make more than 5 of 11 free throws. But just be active, causing steals, setting up fast breaks. Be active in the minutes. Kyle Cuff, when he's in the game, I know he only played 3 minutes last time out, but Kyle Cuff might need to play more than that because some of these Syracuse guys, they're going to need some rest. When Kyle Cuff is on the floor, we need energy and we need defense. That's what we need from Kyle Cuff. Active. Get into the lane. Those two players, mark my words, are going to play a big role tonight. They got to be active, alert, ready. No passengers. Clemson is a really good team. And you're going in their building. And by the way, Syracuse hasn't won in Clemson since 2017. And the Tigers are not exactly a basketball powerhouse. This is like Syracuse's house of horrors lately. They can't win in Clemson. Except for tonight. Syracuse is going to get it done. And I truly believe that. So as far as a score prediction, I'm going to go Syracuse 77, Clemson 72. 77, 72 Syracuse. They're going to get that quad 1 star victory that we talked about. Quad 1 with a star. And they're going to put themselves really back in the bubble. That's what they're going to do. Yeah, Joe Lunardi, you're going to have this team on your list. You're going to have them on your list now because Syracuse, they're going to win this game. I truly believe it. Now, tomorrow, we're going to talk about this game. And hopefully, it goes well.